Good evening. How are you? It's great to be learning with you on a Sunday. Let's light up the darkness. Who is with us? It's pretty cold still in LA. It's probably cold where you are too. I think the whole country's feeling the cold. Yehudit in Florence, South Carolina, Pam in Oregon, Renee in Indiana, Ryan in Florida, Shandor in the Bronx, Nancy made it on time in North Carolina, Willie in Indiana, Sam in Central Virginia, Bella in Florida, Bill in mid-Missouri, Paul in the Great Northwest, and the other Paul, the same Paula says Shalom. Welcome everybody. Over there on the YouTube side, Aoife checking in from Florida, and Lynn in North Texas. We got a great daf tonight. We're finally going to get to the material we probably should have covered on the first page, but that's not how the sages organize it, and perhaps we'll understand why when we get there. We're concluding chapter 5, opening chapter 6, and when we open chapter 6 here in Tractate Nazir, the 17th volume of the Talmud, we're finally going to lay out the basic law of the Nazir. So let's get into it. Our daf tonight is page 34 here in Tractate Nazir. We pick it up a few paragraphs down on 34a with Mishna number 5, the final Mishna of chapter 5. Someone saw a kosher animal with characteristics of both a domesticated animal and a non-domesticated animal. A kosher animal with both the characteristics of a domesticated animal and a non-domesticated animal is how the Steinsaltz Gemara, also known as the Koren Talmud for the publisher, translates the word koi. A koi is a kosher animal with the characteristics of both a domesticated animal and a non-domesticated animal. It's not that the koi is such a commonplace animal. In fact, we don't even know what a koi is. There's a lot of debate about it. Some say it's a water buffalo. Some say it's a particular kind of mountain sheep. It's never been identified in modern times with absolute certainty. But the bottom line is, it is a kosher animal. It's permissible to eat it. But we're not sure if it's domesticated or undomesticated, which affects various laws about slaughtering the animal, eating the animal. And here we're going to use it for this, based on its identity. Does somebody who took a vow of nazirus, are they bound by that vow or not? Just like the Talmud will spend an oversized amount of time talking about the androgynos or the tumtum, right? In the Talmud, there are 4 genders: male, female, androgynos, which is somebody that is both male and female, or tumtum, one that cannot be stated with certainty that it is a male or a female. It might be neither, right? And it's not that, those people who are hermaphrodite or, don't have a particular sex at birth, it's very uncommon. But I say it's outsized discussion. In other words, it comes up more often than you would expect because it creates an interesting body of law when it's neither male nor female, or in this case, whether it's neither domesticated nor undomesticated and possesses attributes of both. And because it has that quality, it comes up very often because, it's those borderline areas of the law where there's interesting discussion. So someone saw this kosher animal that has characteristics of both domesticated and undomesticated, and this person said, I am hereby a nazir if this is a non-domesticated animal. And the other individual said, I am hereby a nazir if this is not a non-domesticated animal. A third one said, I am hereby a nazir if this is a domesticated animal. And a fourth person said, I'm hereby nazir if this is not a domesticated animal. A fifth person added, I am hereby a nazir if this is a non-domesticated animal and a domesticated animal, which is actually true in the sense that it possesses attributes of both. And a sixth person said, I am hereby nazir if this is neither a non-domesticated animal nor a domesticated animal, which is also True. And someone who heard all the above statements said, I am hereby a Nazir if one of you is a Nazir. And another one said, I am hereby a Nazir if none of you is a Nazir. And a final person, the ninth person, said, I am hereby a Nazir if all of you are Nazirim. Now, in this case, where these 9 different people made these 9 seemingly contradictory statements because you would think that the animal is either domesticated or undomesticated, but because it has attributes of both, all 9 of these people become Nazirim. That's the Mishnah. Here's the Gemara. With regard to the ruling of the Mishnah, that they are all Nazirim, it is taught in one Baraisa that this case involves a total of 9 Nazirim, right? 9 people who become Nazirim. And it is taught in a different Baraisa that they are 9 sets of nazirus, meaning like it could be one person who has to observe 9 different terms of nazirus. Now the Gemara clarifies, well, granted, one can understand the Baraisa that says that there are 9 people who become Nazirim. For example, if there were many people who associated their nazirus with the status of this koi, this kosher animal that has the attributes of both domesticated and undomesticated. So each with one of the statements listed above. It would make sense that 9 people become Nazirim based on these statements that can't, because they're talking about an ambiguous identity in a manner that includes attributes of that identity, all 9 of them can become Nazirim. However, how can you find that these circumstances of 9 sets of Nazirus in one person? That one person could have made all 9 statements and would have to observe 9 different terms of Nazirus. Granted, you can find 6, as we learned in the Mishnah, that there are 6 ways in which the nature of a koi can be expressed. It is a non-domesticated animal. It is not a non-domesticated animal. It is a domesticated animal. It is not a domesticated animal. It is both a non-domesticated animal and a domesticated animal. It is neither a non-domesticated animal nor a domesticated animal. One person could associate his acceptance of nazirus with all of the above possibilities. However, how can you find these circumstances of the other 3? We understand how 6 of the 9 could apply to one person. But since the other 3 were somebody saying, I am a Nazir if all of you are Nazirim, or I am a Nazir if none of you are Nazirim, or I am a Nazir if one of you is a Nazir, right? That seems to be a person conditioning his own nazirs on the statements of other people. How can you say that only one person is involved? Right? If one of the statements, if one of you is a Nazir and if one of you is not a Nazir, are necessarily expressed by individuals who did not make the initial statements. These last 3 statements address the group of people who first spoke. So Rav Sheshes said it is possible in a case where 9 people issued the statements mentioned in the Mishnah, and someone said, I am hereby a Nazir, and the Nazirus of all of them are incumbent upon me. Since each of the 9 people is obligated to observe a term of Nazirus, this last one is obligated to observe 9 different terms. And that concludes our discussion of Mishnah number 5, and that concludes our discussion of chapter 5 here in Tractate Nazirus. Now, we go into chapter 6, and as is so often the case in these tractates, now you would think that, okay, this is Tractate Nazir. It's about the laws of one who vows to be a Nazir and what are going to be his obligations and what is going to be prohibited to him. And so we should just start with the basic law of Nazirs. But the sages don't do that. They always open up with what interests them, kind of the more difficult cases, which will pull their students into the discussion. And then later, they go back to basics. And so here we are at chapter 6, going back to basics. And before we do that, why don't we just read in one go what the Torah says about a Nazir. So this is the book of Numbers, right? The 4th book of the Torah in Hebrew, Bamidbar. Chapter 6, verses 1 through 21. This is what we needed to do right at the outset, right? So here's the law of the Nazir as written in the Torah, in the written Torah. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, and say to them, when either a man or woman shall clearly utter a vow. And by the way, what's nice about reading this now is having gone through, these 34 pages that we've covered, now the verses from the Torah will actually be much more meaningful to us, right? We'll pick up the nuances in the Torah much better. So maybe the sages were really on to something by waiting to do the basics. Okay, right? So, when either a man or a woman shall clearly utter a vow, the vow of a Nazir, to consecrate himself to the Lord, he shall abstain from wine and strong drink. He shall drink no vinegar of wine or vinegar of strong drink, neither shall he drink any liquor of grapes, nor eat fresh grapes or dried. Right? So you see that the Torah is already prohibiting both grapes and raisins, both wine and brandy, right? Strong drink made from the grape. Now, all the days of his nazirus, he shall eat nothing that is made of the vine, from pits to grape skin. All the days of his vow of nazirus, no razor shall come upon his head, until the days are fulfilled, in which he consecrated himself to the Lord. He shall be sacred. He shall let the locks of the hair of his head grow long. All the days that he consecrated himself to the Lord, he shall not come near to a dead body. For his father or his mother, for his brother or for his sister, he shall not become impure for them when they die, because his nazirus to God is upon his head. All the days of his nazirus, he is sacred to the Lord. And if any man dies very suddenly beside him, and he renders impure his consecrated head, then he shall shave his head on the day of his purification. On the seventh day he shall shave it. His purification from tumas mace, becoming impure for the dead. He has a 7-day purification, then he shaves his head. And on the 8th day, he shall bring 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons to the priest to the door of the tent of meeting. And the priest shall prepare one for a sin offering and the other for a burnt offering, and make atonement for him, for that he sinned by reason of the dead. He shall hallow his head that same day, and he shall consecrate to the Lord the days of his nazirus, and shall bring a male sheep of the first year for a guilt offering, but the former days shall be void. Right? He has to start over the count, because his consecration was rendered impure. And this is the law of the Nazir when the days of his consecration are fulfilled. He shall bring it to the door of the tent of meeting. Right? The Mishkan in the desert, the temple, when the temple is standing in Jerusalem. And he shall present his offering to the Lord, 1 male sheep of the first year without blemish for a burnt offering, and 1 female sheep of the first year without blemish for a sin offering, and 1 ram without blemish for a peace offering, and a basket of unleavened bread, cakes of fine flour mingled with oil, and unleavened wafers spread with oil, and their meal offering and their libations. And the priest shall bring them before the Lord, and shall sacrifice his sin offering and his burnt offering. And he shall sacrifice the ram for a sacrifice of a peace offering to the Lord, with the basket of unleavened bread. And the priest shall also sacrifice its meal offering and its libation. And the Nazir shall shave his consecrated head at the entrance to the tent of meeting. He has to shave at the temple, right? And he shall take the hair of his consecrated head and put it on the fire. This we haven't covered at all yet, right? The hair that he shaves off, he shall put it on the fire, which is under the sacrifice of the peace offering. And the priest shall take the cooked foreleg and 1 unleavened loaf out of the basket and 1 unleavened wafer, and shall put them upon the palms of the Nazir after he has shaven his Nazirus. And the priest shall wave them for a wave offering before the Lord. This is sacred for the priest, together with the breast of waving and the thigh of heaving. And after that, the Nazir may drink wine. Right? That's when his Nazirus is completed. Now he is permitted to drink wine again. This is the law of the Nazir who takes a vow, and of his offering to the Lord for his Nazirus, beside that for which his means suffice, according to his vow which he takes, so he must do after the law of his Nazirus. That's the body of law that regulates all these vows of Nazirus that we are covering in this tractate. Now we go on with chapter 6. Here's Mishna number 1 of chapter 6. 3 types of actions are prohibited for a Nazir: the contraction of ritual impurity from a corpse, and the shaving of one's hair, and eating or drinking any substances that emerge from the vine. And the Mishnah adds, and all products that emerge from the vine combine with one another to the amount that renders a Nazir liable to receive lashes. Meaning there's a minimum amount, right? But all the different substances can combine, right? The grape and the seeds and the skins, they will combine to fulfill the minimum measure that would render him liable to receive lashes if he was warned and eats it anyway. And he is liable only if he eats an olive bulk of the grapes, right? So probably a grape is small. Most grapes are smaller than olives, I would think. I mean, not necessarily, but they have like a kind of standard measure, which is an olive bulk. So if he eats one grape that's smaller than an olive, right, he's not liable to receive lashes for that. He's still violated his vow, but he's not liable to receive lashes if he doesn't eat the minimum measure. But you can make the minimum measure by combining different foods that he ate that emerged from the grapevine. An initial version of the Mishnah says that a Nazir is liable to receive lashes only if he drinks a quarter lug of wine. And Rabbi Akiva says, now this initial Mishnah, it's very interesting, right? Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi compiled the Mishnah much later, right? After the Second Temple was destroyed around the year 200 of the Common Era. But there are some early Mishnayos that were, sort of took shape even in the early Second Temple period. And then later sages actually revised that. And this is one of those cases. Right? So the initial version of the Mishnah said that he's only liable for lashes if he drinks a quarter lug of wine. That's like a fair amount. That's like 3 shots of wine. But Rabbi Akiva says, even if he soaked his bread in wine, and the two together contain enough to combine to the amount of an olive bulk, right? So that's much less substance, than 3 shots of wine. That just some bread soaked in it and the amount of bread and wine together is about an olive bulk. That's enough to be liable for lashes. And furthermore, a Nazir is liable to receive lashes for consuming wine by itself, and for grapes by themselves, and for chartzanim by themselves, and for zagim by themselves, as each of these is forbidden separately by the Torah. Now, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says he is liable only if he eats an olive bulk that includes at least 2 chartzanim and 1 zag, in accordance with the verse from chartzanim to zag, where the first term is in the plural and the second is in the singular. Now, what are these terms, chartzanim and zag? And the Mishnah discusses the meaning of these terms. Which parts are chartzanim and which are zagim? So the chartzanim are the outside parts, the skin of the grape, while the zagim are the inner parts, the seeds. This is the statement of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yosei says the opposite is the case. And this is your mnemonic so that you should not make a mistake. It is like a bell, which is a zog, to remind you what a zag is, worn by an animal, in which the outer part, which corresponds to the skin of the grape, is called zog, and the inner portion of the bell, the clapper, which corresponds to the seeds in a grape, this is called inbal, which, you just remember it's not the zag, and so that's the chartzanim. And that's Mishnah number 1 here in chapter 6. Here comes the Gemara. The Mishnah taught that 3 types of actions are prohibited for a Nazir. Contracting ritual impurity, right? Coming into contact with the dead or walking over a grave, shaving the head, and consuming products of the vine. Now the Gemara infers, that which emerges from the vine, yes, it is included in the prohibition. However, any part of the vine itself, other than its fruit, no, this is not forbidden. Now the Gemara comments, well, the Mishnah is not in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Elazar. This is as it is taught in a baraisa that Rabbi Elazar says, even the leaves and tendrils of the vine are included in the prohibitions of nazirus. Just make an adjustment here. I have a portable heater, and my office was very cold when I stepped in, but it's warmed up now. Okay. Are included in the prohibitions of nazirus. Now, some say this statement with regard to the latter clause of the Mishnah, that he is liable to receive lashes only if he eats an olive bulk of the grapes. The Gemara infers, if he eats from the grapes, yes, he is liable. But if he eats from the vine itself, no, he's not liable. So if so, the Mishnah is not in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Elazar. And this is as it is taught in a baraisa that Rabbi Elazar says even the leaves and tendrils are included in the prohibition. And this is not going to be the halacha. The way the halacha, the law comes out, is that it's the fruit of the vine and any product derived from the fruit, from the grapes themselves. But if you actually eat the wood of a grapevine or the leaves and shoots, that's not consuming the fruit of the vine, as it were. So the Gemara asks, with regard to what do Rabbi Elazar and the rabbis disagree? What is the basis of their dispute? Why does Rabbi Elazar come out and say that the vine itself and its branches and leaves is the part of the grapevine, a product of the grapevine, and therefore if a Nazir eats that, he is liable to receive lashes? And why do the majority disagree with Rabbi Elazar? What is the basis of their disagreement? So the Gemara explains, Rabbi Elazar interprets the verses employing the hermeneutical principle of amplifications and restrictions, and the rabbis are going to employ the method of generalizations and details. Now, Yosef the other day asked about these hermeneutical principles, and are we aspiring to master them? And I said to him, these are so complicated. It's definitely beyond me to ever say that I would master these principles of exegesis or these principles of hermeneutics, of how the rabbis derive certain laws from the way that the Torah explains the initial source of the law. So this is one of those cases where we'll see, how difficult it is to understand. And you read this in a Hebrew prayer book every day, sort of the 13 principles, the 13 hermeneutical principles that Rabbi Yishmael lists. It's at the beginning of the Hebrew prayer book. We say it every morning. And so this is one of those cases where it's really difficult to understand. There's two principles, right? So Rabbi Elazar is going to use amplifications and details, and we'll explain how that works. And the rabbis who disagree with him use generalizations Rabbi Elazar uses amplifications and restrictions, and the rabbis use generalizations and details. Right? So the basic difference is when the Torah lists a law and then gives examples and then goes back and seems to restate the law. So then what just happened? One system of thought is, well, it stated the law, and then it amplified the law to include more cases, and then it restricted the law to exclude certain cases. That's how Rabbi Elazar is handling it. And then the rabbis say, no, that's not exactly what it was. It was a generalization, and then it gave details as examples of the generalization, and then it generalized again to tell us which sorts of cases those details are similar to. And these are sort of two different philosophies of understanding what the Torah stated. And based on which of these sort of, approaches of learning out the law in the Torah we use, we're going to end up with a different understanding. In this case, Rabbi Elazar ends up saying that a Nazir can't eat the wood or the leaves of the grapevine. And the rabbis say he can. He doesn't violate his nazirus if he eats wood or leaves. It's pretty unhealthy. But the law in the Torah is meant to say he can't eat grapes, grape seeds, or any, raisins, grape juice, wine, vinegar, brandy. That's the stuff that's prohibited, not the wood or the bark or the leaves of the grapevine. Now let's see how this works. So with regard to what do Rabbi Elazar and the rabbis disagree, the Gemara explains, Rabbi Elazar interprets the verses employing the hermeneutical principle of amplifications and restrictions, while the rabbis interpret them employing the hermeneutical principle of generalizations and details. And the Gemara clarifies, Rabbi Elazar interprets the verses employing the principle of amplifications and restrictions. And how do we see it? Numbers 6:3, quote, he shall abstain from wine and strong drink. And this restricts the prohibition to wine and strong drink. The subsequent phrase, anything that is made of the grapevine, amplifies the prohibition. So the Gemara elaborates. In this manner, the Torah restricts and amplifies. right? It says anything that comes from the grapevine, but then it restricts, but then it, right? So first it amplifies the restrictions. So first it says anything from the grapevine, and then it says he shall abstain from wine and strong drink. So that restricts the prohibition to just wine and strong drink. But then the Torah adds another phrase, anything that is made of the grapevine, and that amplifies the prohibition again. So in this manner, the Torah first restricts the prohibition, anything from the grapevine, to wine and strong drink, and then it amplifies to anything that comes from the grapevine, which would include virtually all substances associated with the grapevine. So what does it amplify? When it amplifies, what does it include? It amplifies and includes all matters and substances that come from the vine. What does it restrict? After all, the phrase, he shall abstain from wine and strong drink, it must be excluding something, according to Rabbi Nazir. So according to this interpretation, that verse restricts only one part of the vine, the branches. A Nazir who eats the branches of the vine has not committed a transgression, according to Rabbi Nazir. But he would say that the leaves and the vine itself, yes, he has transgressed. And conversely, the rabbis, the majority who disagree with Rabbi Nazir, they interpret our verses employing the principle of generalizations and details. So the phrase, he shall abstain from wine and strong drink, this is an example of a detail. The phrase, anything that is made of the grapevine, this is a generalization. And when the verse continues, from pits to grape skin, it has given an example of a detail again. So we have detail, generalization, and detail again. So according to the exegetical method, you may deduce that the verse is referring only to items similar to the detail, just as the items mentioned in the detail are clearly defined as a fruit or fruit waste, i.e. the grape seeds or skins, that's fruit waste, and the fruit, we get what the fruit is. So too, everything that is forbidden by the generalization is a fruit or fruit waste, not leaves, not tendrils, not the branches of the vine itself, as maintained by Rabbi Elazar. So the Gemara asks, if so, one can suggest an alternative derivation, just as the items mentioned in the detail are clearly defined as a complete fruit, so too everything forbidden must be a complete fruit, excluding unripe fruit. Why, according to the rabbis, are unripe grapes included in the prohibition? You will say the following counter-argument. If so, what has the verse left you to derive from its meaning that it has not stated? If you say grapes and raisins, well, these are explicitly written. What are you interpreting to tell us that using this principle of generalizations, details, and generalization, and detail again, what do you come to add, sages, with your interpretation? If it's already explicitly written in the Torah, what do you come to add? Right? What are you coming to derive from its meaning that the Torah itself has not already stated? If you say grapes and raisins, these are explicitly written. If you say wine and vinegar, these are also written. What then does the generalization come to add? Evidently, you cannot learn in accordance with the last version, which excludes unripe fruit. Rather, you must learn in accordance with the first version, which includes the fruit and excludes only leaves and tendrils. And the Gemara asks, and as we eventually include everything that is similar to the detail of fruit and the waste of fruit, what is the meaning when the verse states from pits to grape skin? This serves to tell you a general principle of biblical hermeneutics, right? Or let's say rabbinical exegesis that applies throughout the Torah. Here's a principle that applies throughout the Torah. Whenever you find only a detail and a generalization, you cannot broaden it and learn that the generalization is limited to be like the detail by saying that the generalization merely clarifies the previous detail. Rather, the generalization becomes added to the detail so that it includes all matters, even those dissimilar to the detail, until the verse specifies and adds another detail after the generalization, in the manner that it's specified with regard to a Nazir by inserting the phrase from pits to grape skin after it already stated anything that is made of the grapevine. So the exegetical method of a detail, a generalization, and a detail means that the generalization includes only something that is similar to the detail. In this particular example, leaves and tendrils are excluded. What's included? Fruit, whole fruit, dried fruit, wine, juice, vinegar, strong drink made of the fruit, right? It's like everything that comes from, that emerges from the grapevine except what? Leaves and tendrils, branches, the bark itself. It's just all about the fruit, the waste of the fruit, the products of the fruit, derivatives of the fruit, etc. Now, the Gemara analyzes the details of this baraisa. The master said above, just as the items mentioned in the detail are clearly defined as a fruit or fruit waste, so too everything forbidden to the Nazir by the Torah is a fruit or fruit waste. And the Gemara clarifies the fruit mentioned by the Torah is grapes. What is fruit waste? Vinegar. As in the verse, he shall drink no vinegar or wine, or he shall drink no vinegar of wine or vinegar of strong drink. Now, I'm almost done. If you have questions or comments, get them in. So what is this statement? So too everything forbidden by the generalization is a fruit, serving to include. It serves to include unripe grapes. And what is this statement? So too everything forbidden by the generalization is a fruit or fruit waste, stated with regard to fruit waste. What is this going to include? Which fruit waste, unspecified by the verse, is added by means of this derivation? And Rav Kahana said, this serves to include, in the prohibition, grapes that have become wormy. With regard to the phrase from pits to grape skin, Ravina said, this serves to include the part of the fruit that is between the seeds and the skin, which I think we would just call the fruit, right? Like the pulp of the grape. That's going to be included. So, again, it's complicated. It's difficult to follow, no question. But this was a good example of trying to slow down and understand how the rabbis are deriving additional laws. They're not adding to the Torah. They're finding laws that weren't spelled out, but that are necessary to know so that we can live a Torah life. And they use, and in other parts, they really need these principles, or we wouldn't understand at all what the Torah comes to include or exclude. But here, the law of the Nazir is actually spelled out very clearly in the Torah. And so you might ask, why do they need to bring these additional principles? What is not already spelled out? Perhaps it's unripe grapes. Perhaps it's grapes that have gone moldy or wormy. But definitely we see that only the fruit and the product of the fruit of the grapevine is included in the prohibition of the Nazir to eat it, not the wood, the branches, the leaves. Okay, let's go to questions or comments on our daf, page 34, concluding chapter 5 and opening chapter 6 tonight. Would stuffed grape leaves violate a Nazir vow? Perfect question. So first of all, do we know for a fact that grape leaves, when we talk about stuffed grape leaves, are actually from a grapevine? You never know. But assuming that's true, I think maybe we haven't been clear enough about leaves, but it does seem to me, where do we end up? The vine itself, no. Okay, here we go. Here's the halacha from Rambam. Right? So the halacha is according to Maimonides. The leaves of a vine, its sap, and its nascent fruit, right, unripe fruit, are all permitted to a Nazir, as they are neither fruit nor fruit waste, but are considered to be part of the tree. So there, for once, a clear and definitive answer, Sharon. Grape leaves, okay. Stuffed grape leaves, okay for the Nazir to eat. And this is assuming that grape leaves are actually leaves of a grapevine. Nevertheless, they are not included in the prohibition to eat fruit or the waste of fruit. Leaves are part of the tree and are not included in that prohibition. All right, that's all the questions that Nina's passed over to me. That's what we've got for today. With God's help, we'll be together again tomorrow night. Page 35. Wait, is this a late breaking question? No, it's not. Tomorrow night, 6 p.m. Pacific, the normal Monday time, for page 30.